I don't know what's going on in Baltimore post the bridge collapse, but I'm sure you do. So, is there anything positive to report on pertaining to what did happen, how it's being handled, and where do we go from here?
Whew, well, I mean, there are some positives, but it's kind of like, like given the state of the conversation that we're having, right? It can feel like a cruel joke to call it a positive amidst so much negative, but in fact, there are positives here. I mean, starting with the fact that, as we discussed previously, like this could have been a lot worse, right? The East Palestine, I was just talking to folks about that like right before this call, including a couple residents, and they're still going through hell. Like they've been abandoned. They are still in their homes. They've been exposed to all this crap. And like they're worried that they're bioaccumulating it, which they are. They don't know what that's going to do to them. They don't know about the cancers. Like they're still stuck in this crap. And like everything we do to try to help feels like nothing like even remotely enough to getting them what they need. And then you come to Baltimore, where, like you said, you had the goddamn bridge collapse. I just interviewed residents of South Baltimore and communities across South Baltimore, not just Curtis Bay, but Mount Winans and like, just neighborhoods all in that area that are in a sacrifice zone. They are living like they have like over 70 industrial polluters in that one area. The main one is a CSX rail terminal that's been getting coal dust on everyone. Like I've driven past, when I drive to their community, I have to drive past these CSX cars just sitting there with, mile upon mile of coal car filled with coal with nothing covering them. So then I go to their homes and there's black shit all in their homes and on their windowsills, and they're coughing it up and they're saying like, this is what we're living in. And then people like the guys who worked on that bridge are living in even worse situations because they are forced under the floorboards of our society, being immigrant workers, and this country being such a hellscape for working people in general, yada, yada, yada. So like you've got all that terrible stuff, and the bridge collapse felt like just another horrible thing to add to the mix. But I stress it could have actually been a lot worse, especially in terms of like the amount of containers on that ship, the dolly that did contain toxic chemicals. I believe Darn Noor reported there were over 50, and only like some kind of fell into the water. That had mainly like perfume and other shit, not like the battery acid. Like again, it could have been worse, but the fact of the matter is like it's been taking a long time to remove that debris. It's been taking it took a long time to recover the remaining bodies in the bay. And, it's taken a long time to sort of like, reopen the port of Baltimore. And in all the while, the sort of economic ripple effects have been punishing working people, not just the folks who immediately lost their jobs in the port itself, who are now sort of coming back to work bit by bit, or hoping that there's going to be more work coming very, very soon. But all the commerce that comes from that port, which of course is again why it was such an important, port in and of itself, but also a national priority for the Biden administration to get it reopened, is because it is a major port. So like, anyway, I'm like, maybe I'm going off the
Well,
rails.
let me ask you this, because this is important. I think this is a good point, and I've been to Baltimore as well. We all know that the only place that anybody with money cares about in Baltimore is the waterfront. What a surprise! But for the most part, the city is completely, we'll say, past the point where it needs a revamp, and that goes without saying. Like
It's being
anything,
killed. It's being
yeah,
throttled. Like
yeah.
my colleague Stephen and Taya produced an incredible documentary called Tax Broke that we released this past year. Google it, go check it out. You guys can find it online. It's a really important documentary that they produced over a number of years, showing how the city of Baltimore has been set up to fail. Like it is one of a few like rare cities that like over 150 years ago was like constitutionally prohibited from ever expanding. So Baltimore has had a circumscribed like circle around it, and they can't expand into Baltimore County, can't expand its tax base. So it's more heavily taxes. It's like internal, like city tax base. And then as you get deindustrialization, as you get all the forces that have economically gutted Baltimore while over policing and under resourcing its like marginalized communities, you get this sort of death cycle where the city is trying to sort of like save itself. And the only way it can think to do that, apparently, is to give these massive tax breaks to wealthy developers to build up the waterfront. And they'll make their pitch to city council saying like, oh, we're going to create jobs. We're going to help like improve blighted communities. But then you end up with the tale of two cities. Like you said, you've got the one Baltimore that working people live in, and you got the high rise glinting, gleaming on the waterfront that, you know, like the money keeps going to. And like, this is kind of a metaphor for the whole fucking country, you would say. Like,
It is. And Baltimore is a prime example of that, because I have been to both sides of the city, and I can assure you that while there is sort of a distance between West Baltimore and obviously what goes on the waterfront, it's not like it's one block from the next. However, there is no question that within the city limits, and I'm guessing this is way above the pay grade of the mayor in terms of what the city of Baltimore can actually do at this point. But like you said, these things are designed to fail on purpose. They're not designed to benefit society as a whole. They're designed to benefit a very select few people. There's a reason why you have the Ritz-Carlton right on the waterfront. There's a reason why you have those high-end restaurants that are about $200 a plate on like a Friday or Saturday night dinner. It's done that way on purpose. This is not.
And the developers own the fucking Sun and the and the media here. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, that's not a surprise at all, because the whole concept of controlling the media apparatus is to convince people that, no, it's just, and this is why I hate liberals more than conservatives, because in their mind, it's like, no, it's just you. You're just stupid. We're fine. Everything's okay. Don't you see how wonderful the promenade and the walk around place is? You could bring your dog here. You can't afford to live here, but that's not the point. The point is that you feel good when you're in this area. That's always been my kind of takeaway when I see how that, kind of unfolds. And that's no different than when you had the bridge collapse down here in Florida. The name of the island is slipping me right now, but the point is that when that bridge collapsed, DeSantis had it fixed within a weekend. When it's something that directly affects people with money, it gets done immediately. If something were to happen to the downtown area of Baltimore on the waterfront, it would be handled immediately. If something bad is going on in the working class area that runs along the interstates, that runs along where the industrial power plants are and things like that, no one cares. Because as far as they're concerned, it's like, well, they're fucked anyway. So, we'll see how long they can hang on for. And that I think is a metaphor for the country.
It is, because you're touching on something really vital here, brother. And this is like kind of, I think, like why the work that I do feels like I am like there's a noir element to it.
Transitioning into East Palestine, is that kind of
even from East Palestine to Baltimore, from Boeing to BP, as I keep saying, it's like I am interviewing working people who are at these different pressure points of a decaying society, who are telling me through their stories that they've been telling me for years and telling us on the Real News, not just on my show, but on Mark Steiner's show, Mansa Musa's show, Stephen and Taya Graham's show. Like, I mean, the pain and like struggle that regular people are going through, like that is our bread and butter. We are there talking to folks at the grassroots of struggle about their lives, their struggles, how they're fighting back, and how we can be part of that change. And the reason I bring that up is that, like I told the people in East Palestine 2 months ago when I was standing in the East Palestine Country Club, having interviewed folks in that community for the entire year prior, and just finally getting out there to film for the Real News 2 months ago, I said, it's not that people have forgotten you, it's that so many people around this country feel just as forgotten as you do. I know, because I talked to so many of them. Like I told the folks in East Palestine, I was just interviewing a father in Uvalde who lost his son Uzi, at the school shooting at Robb Elementary. Like, his community feels forgotten. He feels forgotten. Remember when we were all talking about them and then we forgot? Like, that is the American condition. And the reason I thought the way you framed it was so important is because there's a diagnosis here that you can only sense if you start looking around for the signs of a society that values life, so little, right? That values human life and human thriving for all of us, not just an elite, like sequestered few in their high castles, but you can see the results of a society that thinks so little of its people in the fact that that bridge was not being, like updated and sort of refortified to be better prepared for the
Accident
kind
waiting
of
to happen.
for the
Accident waiting.
mega ships. Like I just interviewed with Mark Steiner, the former head of the port, the Longshore Union here in the port of Baltimore, and he was like, the ships in my day weren't even like a third of that size. Like we've had the ships explode in the size, just like the cars or the rail. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. My tongue is getting ahead of my brain. We have like trains, freight trains that are 3 miles long when they used to be 1 mile long, and they have 2 people on it when they used to have 5 men crews. We have these massive shipping vessels coming in and out of our ports, only 2% of which are actually regulated by U.S. standards. The rest are all flag of convenience ships, and they're 3 times the size that they were 3 decades ago. But we haven't updated the infrastructure, like the bridge that they're passing under. Instead, what we have done is, again, disinvest in life. We have corroded like the very lifeblood of our society for the sake of profits, for the sake of short-term profits at our long-term expense. Maintaining that bridge, refortifying that bridge, that's too expensive. People will never go for it. So we're going to let it like kind of just sit there while the ships get bigger and the risks get bigger as well. The guys working on that bridge, that's a job contracted with the state. Like that should be a union job. It should be a job where the foreman at least has a direct line to emergency dispatch so that they can know to get off that bridge because a ship is about to plow into it. But they didn't, because again, over time, a society organized around profit and organized around the belittlement and disdain of human life and disdain for the notion of working people living meaningful, flourishing lives on a livable planet. Like that is so counterintuitive to a capitalist society that only sees profit and needs it no matter what, even if it destroys the rest of us, and needs to deregulate everything that the government is involved in, needs to disinvest from our public infrastructure, raid our taxes to fund more wars across the country, while our communities like East Palestine and South Baltimore are dying and being poisoned by the same companies that are exploiting us at work. Like this is a vicious, horrible cycle that I see in the lives and stories of people who share them with me. And you start to really feel like we are all living in an active corporate crime scene, and like we all need to start fighting back for real. Otherwise, we're all going to look like East Palestine. Like that's the way that we're all fucking going at this point. And in fact, more of us are there than we already realize, right? The concept of a sacrifice zone really, if people have understand what that is in general, they tend to think of frontline communities right next to polluting factories, and that is kind of where it comes from. But think about the concept of what it means to essentially sacrifice the livelihoods and functioning of whole communities for the sake of industry. That's happening all across the world. That's happening all across the country. It's happening to the coastal communities that are becoming unlivable because of man-made climate change, to the desert and communities and rural communities in the southwest of this country, to communities like in Cancer Alley, Louisiana, who have been getting blasted with petrochemical exhaust because of the deregulatory government environment that they've created in that state, just like South Baltimore here. So you have that, but then you also have every person on the planet poisoned by DuPont, right? The vast majority of us are already half, forever chemicals already. We're already being sacrificed. This is the way that society has set us all up. And that's the direction we're all heading in. And it's freaking me the fuck out because I'm hearing it from different people around the country, and I'm trying to put it out there and let people know. And then, it's we're all so fucking overwhelmed. We're still trying to stop a genocide in fucking Gaza. Our political election is a shit show. It's really dire, but these are the moments in the movie when things are at their darkest. And, the Fellowship of the Ring, the whatever it is, we gotta fucking fight back. Otherwise, they're gonna take everything from us.